So, good morning. Good morning on this fine Sunday morning. Let's see what's going on over here. Let me just turn off the disturbances everywhere. Okay. So, good morning. I'm still on the road. As many of you know, thank God for a simcha of my child's wedding. And I want to share a Chassidic story that is somewhat puzzling. Its connection to the Torah portion and its message. So there's a story told, yes, related to marriage, of the Mittler Rebbe. The Mittler Rebbe was the son of the first Chabad Rebbe, Rabbi Shneir Zalman of Liadi, and he was besides being a Rebbe, which means he was a tzaddik and a holy and a righteous man, etc. This was still during the lifetime of his father, the first Chabad Rebbe. And, each of the Rebbes, there were 7 Rebbes of Chabad, and sometimes you find certain things that each one, focused on or excelled in. I don't know if excelled is the right word. Stood out, put emphasis on. The Mittler Rebbe, Reb Dov Ber of Chabad, of Lubavitch, one of the things that he stood out is that his total life and focus to an extreme was Torah, and more specifically the esoteric, mystical Chassidic dimension of Torah. So much so that there was a saying said about him that if you would cut his finger, not blood would come forth, but Chassidic teachings would drip forth, because that was his life, that was his blood force, his blood. So the story is told that when he was to get married to his soon-to-be wife, he was taught and learned all the laws related to marriage. There's laws that you learn about, the laws of family purity, about going to a mikveh, when you should and when you shouldn't have relations, sanctity of marriage. I mean, it's just a lot of laws, many laws that the groom learns until today. Groom learns these laws, the bride learns her set of laws, of Torah laws. And when he was finally introduced to his kala to then start to implement these rules on a sort of down-to-earth, practical level, he had a total meltdown in today's language, meaning he couldn't deal with it. So to explain is that because he was so spiritual and learned everything on its highest lofty level, when he was learning these laws, he was understanding it and applying it to the sublime, meaning husband and wife are analogous to God and the Jewish people, and marriage is compared to the giving of the Torah. There are many esoteric insights, Kabbalistic insights. The groom represents the 7 Kabbalistic sfirot of Zoh. The wife is compared to the attribute of Malchut. There's many Kabbalistic insights of what the marriage and sort of the origin level of what marriage is all about. So when it came down to actual physical real world, what we call the real world, to him that was unreal. The real world was the sublime and the spiritual. And the story is told that he had to relearn all the laws, and now understanding that it means in this practical physical reality. So what's the point and what's the message of this story? And how does it relate to our Parsha? The Parsha of this week, the Torah portion of this week, is called Shlach, which deals with the known story. If you don't know the story, you could, on your own, update yourself. The story of the spies, where Moses sent 12 spies to go check out the land of Israel when they were still in the desert, to find out how they could conquer the land. And the spies went to Israel, and they came back. This is just giving you the very short version of the story. That they came back from the land of Israel, and they told the Jewish people that we cannot conquer the land. They even went as far as to say that even God cannot conquer the land. This is alluded to in the words when they came back and they gave a report, and they said, Ki chazak hu mimenu. The word mimenu could mean stronger than us, but it could also mean mimenu, stronger than him, referring to God himself. And as such, this led to the entire, as the Torah relates, the entire nation began to weep, and they said, we shall not be able to go into the land. And as a result, God punished them, that they would have to remain in the desert for up to 40 years before they entered into the land. And not only that, this calamity and this conclusion and the lack of belief and faith after the Jews having experienced the 10 plagues, the splitting of the sea, the manna in the desert, the water from the well of Miriam, and still questioning whether God has the strength for them to conquer the land of Israel, this brought about, as it says in the Medrash, God says, you cried for nothing, I'll give you a reason to cry. This brought about that this occurred on Tisha B'Av, the 9th of Av, which is the day when both temples in Jerusalem was destroyed. It's responsible for the exile that we're in today, and all the suffering that we have throughout history is connected in some way to this, the sin of the spies. Now, there are many, like every story in the Torah, there are many explanations. But one of the explanations, one of the dominant sort of themed explanations in Chassidic teachings is how can the spies conclude that God cannot assist us in conquering the land? The language the spies use was Eretz Ochelet Yoshveh. It's a land that consumes its inhabitants. So, I believe we've discussed this in the past. Essentially what the spies were saying is not that God can't conquer the land in the sort of simplest understanding. That would be absurd. What this means is that there's a struggle that exists until today in our world, is whether Torah, mitzvahs, Judaism can only be practiced in a more secluded, sheltered, spiritual, holy environment, or can it also be practiced and lived in a modern, open world? Is it archaic? Is it something that is out of date? I mean, that could be the sort of lower approach. Or the higher challenge or approach is that we have to remain as spiritual and holy as can be in a spiritual, holy synagogue, Sabbath-like environment. But in the real business world, or in the real agriculture world, the real economic world, the real social world, over there you have to sort of lower yourself, and if conniving is needed, if dishonesty is needed to make a living, and so on. So what the spies' argument was that we cannot conquer the land is not so much a shortcoming on God's part, it's a shortcoming on our part. You see, in the desert, we lived in a total sheltered environment. All our material needs were provided miraculously. And the argument was that once we enter into Israel, we then enter into a so-called normal world, normal life, with normal politics and society and making a living and so on, we cannot be the nation that God wants from us to be, a nation observing Torah and mitzvahs. It's just not a reality. It's an impossibility. And that's what it means we cannot conquer the land on a deeper level. And the spies' argument is we must remain in the desert or in a desert-like environment. And Moshe Rabbeinu responded and said, You guys don't understand. You are totally missing the point. If God wanted us to remain in a spiritual, godly environment, our soul would not have come down into this world in the first place. The Torah was given to us as physical human beings with material needs, with normal day-to-day life. The whole objective of Torah is to bring holiness and spirituality into a day-to-day life, into our normal day-to-day life. And this is the connection to the story of the Mittler Rebbe. Yes, it's true, the Mittler Rebbe, who was so spiritual, understood the teachings of marriage on the most lofty level, and that's all fine and good. And I will even make the argument, not only is it fine and good, it's necessary. In other words, that tension, that desire, that yearning that the spies have to remain in a spiritual, holy-like environment is healthy and is necessary. Because then when you enter into the realm of what we call reality, that very yearning and tension keeps you grounded, keeps you focused, keeps you holy, keeps you tethered to what the purpose of it all is. And so too is the marriage. The story of the Mittler Rebbe is a lesson to us that yes, when we're learning about marriage, it's necessary to have the Mittler Rebbe's approach, to first have that understanding that everything starts and comes from that higher spiritual place and exists on that plane, and we need to maintain that connection and yearning to that plane so that when we then relearn it and restudy it and apply it, which is the ultimate objective and the purpose of our soul and creation and life and God's will, you need to have that ebb and flow, so to speak, that pull and return, what's called in the language of Kabbalah, Ratzoi V'Shav. That is when you have a successful life, a successful marriage, a holy marriage, a meaningful marriage. You don't get sort of bogged down, distracted, lose focus, and get consumed, as the language of the Torah, Eretz Ochelet Yoshveh, it's a language the spies were concerned. It consumes its inhabitants, and it swallows up its inhabitants in the world of materialism, in the world of self-absorption, of temptation, and so on. When you have the spies' concern, and you live with that concern, you then are conscientious of the dangers, and you could live a healthy and meaningful and purposeful and fulfilling life. And this relates to life in general, it relates to marriage. Marriage sort of symbolizes when we start a family, and we leave the more spiritual world of yeshiva, of the training of holiness, which is part of the Jewish life cycle, and we enter into the world of business. It's like leaving the desert where all your needs were taken care of by your parents, by your family, and now you enter into a world where you now have to engage in a more materialistic world. So this knowledge, this learning, this study, this tension, this yearning always has to be there, and through that we are sure to both maintain our own connection, our own focus in what life and its purpose in our life and is all about, and so to raising healthy, spiritually sound kids that could weather the challenges and the distractions and the pulls that are out there successfully, and may we be able to do so, and not only influence ourselves and our kids, but make the world around us a better world. May we also apply this to the current challenge of our brothers and sisters of Israel that are dealing with a real challenge of existential challenge, but at the same time we know with complete faith that we will be successful. God says that we will conquer the land, and all the signs and all the fears that we cannot do it is just false. We just have to maintain our connection and understand the deeper spiritual, holy, godly connection that we have to our land, to our traditions, to our Torah, and we will be successful in our battle against our enemies who want to destroy us, which is not just the physical destruction of who we are, but also the purposeful existence of our of our mission to be a light unto the nations, which is part of what this battle is, the good versus the evil. We will be successful as God has promised us. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to share these words of Torah. May you have a wonderful, blessed week.